I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have a special guest with me tonight. His name is Alonzo, and he is a member of United Front Against Displacement. Alonzo, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on. So I've talked about gentrification on the show a couple of times. Before we get into the gentrification issue in reference to Boston in particular, can you explain to everyone what is United Front Against Displacement about?
Yeah, of course. So basically, we're a grassroots group here in Boston and New York, and in the Bay of tenants and just people who see the gentrification all around us, and have started organizing against a few of the ways that this plays out, and it plays out in a lot of ways. But one of the big ways is in public housing, it's privatization. So so there's a neglect of the conditions, and then that's used as an excuse to give away the buildings to private developers and banks to take ownership and build expensive apartments, turn it into this thing called Section 8. And then also we've been organizing with some Section 8 developments, which is a form of subsidized apartments, but under private ownership and management, where a lot of the same nefarious practices, of letting conditions deteriorate, and then springing on people different schemes supposedly to fix those conditions that result in rent increases and stuff like that happen. So yeah, we've been fighting this at mostly these sorts of developments here in Boston and in New York and the Bay as well.
That's right. So this organization has 3 different locations: San Francisco, Boston, and New York. We actually had a member from New York on RBN talking about the housing displacement situation there, where Columbia University has actually been buying up buildings, which affects housing situation. We had the same problem here in Boston, where Northeastern bought up apartment buildings. They also bought up the YMCA, for those who are not aware, and turned those into dorms. And it just continues to gentrify the community. Now, there was a video here, and I want to share this from United Front Against Displacement in reference to Boston. And I want to play a little bit of this, and we can chime in between.
Help but notice all the luxury hotels, condos, and apartment buildings that are popping up everywhere. Rents at some of these places can go as high as $4,000 to $5,000 to $6,000.
And I want to pause here because I don't think people, like, if you don't live in the Boston area, I don't think a lot of people realize just how expensive rent is in Boston now. And these are in neighborhoods that were working class neighborhoods. And now you have these apartments, 3-bedroom, $4,800 a month. Working class people can't afford that. And I want to get your opinion about that, Alonzo.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, it's insanity. It's going on everywhere, but Boston is one of the worst places. Like you're saying, I think later on in the video there's a figure for the average rents for a 1-bedroom, and it's something like in the near $3,000 a month range at this point. Yeah, and then there's all this supposedly affordable housing that developers and the government love to build. That is, I mean, technically it's less expensive than $5,000 a month, but it's not actually affordable to most people who live here. And it's based on the crazy measurements. We can get into that later, maybe. Area median income that are bogus and inflate the median income and inflate the rents that they're allowed to set.
That's right. We're going to get into, I want to talk about affordable housing in a bit, but yeah, let's go back into this.
And meanwhile, average rents in Boston keep going up and up and up. So what's going on? In a word, gentrification.
The alliance between government, real estate companies, banks, and the police.
They're all connected, guys. You guys see the problem? You have the government, you have the banks, you have the real estate agents, and you have the police. And one thing I want to point out as well in reference to the government, one of the problems that we have here in Boston is we don't have rent control anymore. That was once a thing. It's not anymore. And we don't have rent stabilization. So the landlords can increase the rent as much as they want. There's no rule or law here that says you can only increase the rent by this amount per year.
To quote unquote renew the working class in the poor neighborhoods really just means pushing us out of our homes and replacing us with wealthier tenants. As real estate investors speculate on these neighborhoods, buying up property where they think property values will rise, we get pushed out. Our buildings are sold off, our neighbors get evicted, and the police ramp up their harassment, all to make way for this expensive real estate development.
And this image here, I want to point out, if you notice, you have what I would call like an original building here, and it's surrounded by these luxury developments. So eventually what is going to happen is that this building right here in the middle eventually is going to either get bought out or they're going to have to sell it even if they don't want to, because they're not going to be able to afford the rent on the property, because you still have to pay the rent to the city. That's a big part of the problem that people don't understand. When people say, well, why didn't they choose not to sell that building? Why didn't the landlords just choose to keep it? When you have luxury apartments and condos building up around you, this is going to drive the rent up for the area. So whoever owns this building right here, they're eventually going to have to pay more taxes and more rent on the property. So this is a big part of the problem. It's like some people try to stay and they try to ride it out, but you can't ride it out for so long.
Yeah. And just to the earlier point about, the police, the government, the real estate developers, gentrification, like pretty much all of the problems we face are the result of the combined efforts of the whole ruling class, not just one little piece of them. But that all work together through the government, through the police, but through all these different institutions of the banks, of the real estate developers in this case in particular, and yeah, I mean, it's classic that the police ramp up their patrols, their arrests, and ramp up to give this sense of, oh, things are really bad in this neighborhood, and they allow things to actually get worse. They both don't do anything for some times, and then they do a lot to make a big show of it, and that's part of the justification for coming and saying, actually, we just need to get rid of all these people. These people are the problem. Poor people are the problem. Yeah. Working class people are the problem, and they create that justification that way. So anyway.
That's right. David just asked this question: who is moving into these places, agreeing to these rents? Who can afford this? Do they sit empty forever? There's a lot of professionals, David, here in Boston that can afford to pay $3,000, $4,000 a month for rent. They're the ones that are moving in. Tech is really big here in Boston. We're number 2 after Silicon Valley. So you have a lot of tech people. There's Facebook and Google offices here as well. You also have a lot of people in healthcare. So there's doctors that can afford to pay this. And I hate to say it, but as someone who worked in higher ed, but then you also have these universities here like Harvard and BU and Boston College, where you have students at these universities that are coming from pretty wealthy families where they can also afford some of these units. That's a big part of the problem.
And when enough investors jump into the fray, they create a self-fulfilling prophecy, accelerating already rising prices. No matter the exact process in a given area, the end result is the same. We get pushed out further and further away from the city, and the city becomes more and more of a playground for the rich.
One of the things about gentrification is that it's basically a constant cycle. Basically, kind of more affluent people move in, the poor people move out. The affluent people get bored of this place, they go over to where the poor people are, and the poor people either have to move out or move back to where the affluent people left.
And this is Pastor John Wheeler and his daughter. I actually met them too. They were at the Michelle Wu event in Jamaica Plain, and we asked Michelle Wu about the affordable housing issue. So they're another example of a group of people that's about to be pushed out. So Bromley Heath is a development here in Jamaica Plain neighborhood in Boston. That's another one that the city wants to get rid of, and they'll probably replace it with a luxury building.
Yeah, it's a really nefarious but kind of classic plan that they have at Bromley of demolishing a bunch of the buildings, and then they're gonna like almost triple the number of units, and some of the most expensive, which they call moderate income or workforce housing, are gonna go for like between $2,000 and $2,400 a month for a one bedroom. Expensive apartments that they're gonna build, and then they're gonna have other like fake affordable things that most people can't really afford under private ownership.
Basically, a never-ending cycle, especially here in this country.
It is not the same place. It is a place I don't even recognize. There's like 5 different luxury apartments moving in with all rich people, and the apartments are up to $3,000 or $4,000 a month.
Nos están quitando todos los derechos, así como para hacer estar building, haciendo condominiums, haciendo buildings de ¿cómo tú hablas? De oficinas que no tienen importancia y nos están dejando en la calle.
So,
and that was Myra, and she was actually, I interviewed her. If you guys saw that housing video that I did about Grant Manor, that's another housing project in Roxbury neighborhood in Boston that they're actually just letting the building fall apart. And that's something that's done on purpose. For those who are not aware, they just let the building fall apart so the people will be pushed out, and then they'll replace it with like a luxury condo building.
Yeah.
Que no tiene importancia y nos están dejando en la calle.
So they don't want people who work paycheck to paycheck. They don't want that. Like us, we have the paycheck to paycheck. Whatever we make it, we spend it.
Either you're going to be priced out because the value is going to come up, and thus basically some landlords and landowners are going to take advantage of it. Certain businesses are going to come in to try to accommodate the newer population, basically essentially pushing kind of like the guys who are already here out. So it's going to be like, if you're not chased out, you're basically thrown out.
I used to look out my window and see the church, and it was just kind of spiritual sustenance for me. And now I look out and there are buildings yards away from me that are being built. It's really bad. And it makes me feel hedged in by the rich, and they want this property.
As luxury condos shoot up all around and rents get jacked up, many landlords let the conditions in their units deteriorate. They have no reason to keep up our apartments, especially if they're hoping to sell off the buildings later. In public housing, these conditions have resulted in a storm of privatizations, where the projects are handed over to private owners and managers who construct luxury apartments on top of them. Through evictions, botched relocations, and harsh new rules under the new landlords, these programs are destroying what remains of working-class neighborhoods and pushing people out, along with the expansion of fake, quote-unquote, affordable housing that is profitable for landlords and unaffordable for renters. These policies will only make the crisis of gentrification and homelessness worse.
Alonzo, I want to get your take on this affordable housing phrase that's used, because what people may not realize is that oftentimes the affordable housing isn't really affordable for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, whenever you hear about affordable housing, they mean housing where the rents are capped according to different levels of what they call the area median income. So they take an area, it's not, so for Boston, the area median income for Boston is not the median income of Boston. It's not the median income of Boston and its surrounding suburbs. It's a huge area that includes even some parts of New Hampshire and, of course, all the very wealthy suburbs of Boston. And it's way higher than the median income of Boston proper, and certainly way higher than the median income of the working class neighborhoods of Boston. And so then they say anything that is at 80% of that area median income or below, they call affordable. And so when all these developers tout all their affordable housing that they're making, it's usually 80% of this thing, AMI, or 70% of it. And it's and it's entirely unaffordable to the majority of working class people in Boston. Yeah, but they get it, they pat themselves on the back. They say, oh, look, we care about the people and we're making housing for you. Like, so the Harriet Tubman House that got demolished, this historic building, got replaced by condos. They have supposedly affordable units in there. They're tiny studios. And so not even one bedroom, tiny studios at, I think it was between 12 and 1,400, might have been even higher. So what working class family is going to live in a studio for $1,400? I mean, none. It's a big sham, and it's a sham that comes with a lot of money for the developers, because I mean, there's the rents, but then there's also all sorts of government subsidy, not for the people, but subsidy for the developers, subsidy for the landlords. These things called tax credits, low income housing tax credits. So these big banks get in on building this fake affordable housing. They get these enormous tax credits that they can, also then trade on the market of these financial instruments. And so it's a big scheme to turn these places into cash cows, while still not actually being affordable to most people. And insofar as anybody's able to make it in, they're always next to these even more expensive apartments, are always being harassed. They're the ones that are blamed for everything going wrong in the developments, the supposedly affordable units. So it's just a big scam all around.
It really is. Cake Batter said, I've watched it over the past 20 years. South Boston and Jamaica Plain look nothing like it did back then. This is very true. I moved to Boston 11 years ago. And even then, JP was starting to gentrify. I remember when they brought in the Whole Foods, and that was a big concern for a lot of people, because they knew what was coming after that. If they brought in the Whole Foods, that was going to change the demographics in the neighborhood. And then also in reference to South Boston, I used to live in Southie, and Southie is totally has totally changed. Used to be a working class neighborhood. Now it's a place full of professionals. But on the outskirts of Southie, it's surrounded by, there are 3 different housing projects. But when you go into the heart of South Boston, it's not working class anymore.
And they're working to get rid of those places too.
Yeah. Yep. That's what people may not realize. Eventually, those housing projects I told you that surround Southie, they're eventually going to get rid of those too. Because the professionals that have moved in, they don't like that part. They see that as like an eyesore. And you're right. Anytime something goes wrong, those are the people that they point to blame. They're like, oh, it must have been the people from the projects over there. But it's a totally different place now.
They don't give a damn about us.
You, your kids, and your other family members are basically developing asthma, or you're basically getting dizzy and suffering from like the effects of carbon monoxide poisoning, or basically you basically can't really do any cooking because your stove and your refrigerator refuses to work and all that other stuff.
Porque housing se está lavando las manos. Housing is washing the hands. Housing is like, we're not going to do this no more. Well, I mean, y'all deal with your problem.
They do not want public housing anymore. And they're using this half-ass excuse in Washington where they're saying we are not going to invest money in subsidized developments. We're going to make everything Section 8, which doesn't have as many protections.
We've been living under Section 9 all these years, but you want to take it away and give us this thing called Section 8. That you go, oh well, it's better because we can invite partners in. Yeah. Well, when you invite partners in, then you're inviting in more money. You're inviting in big business. Big business has no dealings with the regular common person.
I want to add something here about Section 8 that people may not be aware of. Section 8, a lot of times, too, has a waiting list, sometimes 3 years, 5 years, could go on longer than that. And here's the thing. Let's say you get a raise. Anytime you get outside of that income bracket, because there's an income bracket that you have to be in order to get in there, in order to stay there. That's just kind of how it works. So let's say one day you get a job that's paying you more money, then you got to go. And you still may not make enough to get an apartment on your own in Boston because I just showed you what the rents look like earlier on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a common problem. It's a bit worse at Section 8, but public housing is somewhat similar. That's why we often emphasize, like, when they come in and they take away public housing and then add, replace it with a mixture of Section 8 and this other stuff, you're getting like pretty much the same problems that public housing has, except even worse, with fewer, tenant rights, fewer protections. And then with Section 8, the maximum rents for the units, they can raise them like crazy. That's what happened at Grant Manor. Like a 4-bedroom went from a maximum rent of $2,000 something to $4,800. So that means you're stuck forever paying 30% of your paycheck, no matter how many jobs you get, no matter how many jobs your kids get. Because to pay off $4,800 is a lot, So at least with public housing, they're somewhat more reasonable. Not that reasonable, but limits to how much you're going to end up paying if your income goes up. Yeah,
that's right. That's a good point to mention there, Alonzo. That just because you're in Section 8 doesn't mean they can't increase the rent.
Yeah, and then there's different kinds of Section 8, and some of those, it's not actually even. They can make it up to 40% of your income, combined then also with the utilities where they give you an allowance, but then you end up paying out of pocket if you if it's the winter and you're using the heat a lot and it goes past the allowance, and that's like officially people sometimes end up paying more, and the government will like limit how much they're actually going to contribute to the rent in Section 8, and if the landlord jacks up the rent, well, then you end up, paying a good chunk of the difference. It's a pretty messed up system.
Have private developers coming in who have a profit motive. You lose all of the accountability. Within our current system, gentrification shows no sign of stopping. As long as the rich run society for their personal gain, poor people will get pushed around. But wherever there is oppression, there is resistance. There are far more people getting shafted by gentrification than there are people profiting off of it. We have strength in numbers, but we have to get organized. You can't go to the problem people, which are the head of BHA, the government, because they're the problem.
You could either take a stand again against them and kind of, put your foot down. Or you can just keep letting them, karate chop you in the head just because, they felt like it.
You also run the risk of getting evicted. And this is a piece that I think is important as well. And we know about this happened recently with one of the residents from Grant Manor complained and is now being evicted.
Yeah. I mean, being threatened with eviction and it's going to be fought. And it's such a blatant example of retaliation. I don't think they're going to win. but yeah, they've tried to target people with this sort of thing before, at Grant Manor, at other places, that get involved in the organizing, that yeah, and that fight back, and they think they can scare you with it, but the thing is, uh, um, it's very obvious if you get hit with an eviction notice after you sent a bunch of emails and protested and made public statements and showed the pictures of the conditions in your apartment. It's pretty obvious that it's retaliation, and so you can fight that, and that's something I think is important for people to see, that they're going to be attacked by their landlords, whether it be these big corporate landlords, these corporate slumlords, whether it be Boston Housing, whatever it be the case, in their day to day. And if people come together and fight back, I mean, sometimes, yeah, you'll get targeted or something like that, but there's ways to fight that. And actually, in some ways, you're given more tools to fight once you've become part of the struggle, once you have other people you're fighting with, and once it's public, the fight. You have more tools to fight against these BS that they'll throw at you, than when you try to keep your head down, and try to just go along with what they throw at you. And I think that's not just true for housing, but in general, and it's something that I think is really important in this country to be developing, this sense that yeah, I mean, we're gonna get thrown a lot of stuff when we fight back against our oppressors, whether they be landlords, whether they be our bosses at work, or whatever is the case. But in coming together and in fighting, that's how the daily attacks, the daily reality of oppression and of being, sucked dry by these different forces, can be combated, and how we can move forward.
That's right. Let me finish this here.
So we have to wake up, to stand up, to be united, to fight in what the God is gonna give us.
We're going to be at your city halls. We're going to be at your state houses. We're going to be at any place where you're standing there telling the people that this lie that you're making Boston better for them when you're making it better for yourselves and those that are in your class.
Where we're going to go? We're going to go in the street, and then we're going to end up not only in the street, but in front of their house, because there are going to be so many people homeless. So we're going to have to spread to their homes, and they're not going to like that. So I believe that we have to get together, get stronger, demand more, and fight for our rights. That's what I'm saying. We have to fight, because if we don't fight, we're going to end up in the street.
All of us in this video have been working together to organize across developments, neighborhoods, and even cities, because no single development is an island facing gentrification alone. The more people struggle along with us, the stronger we will be. And at the end of the day, the power must rest in the people.
So this video is called, for those of you who are wondering, The Fight Against Gentrification in Boston, and that's on the United Front Against Displacement's YouTube channel. There is a question here for you, Alonzo, on Rockfin. Let me go ahead and bring that up. That's from Roger Meadows. Thank you so much for the tip, Roger Meadows. He said, let's see if I can make this larger for people to see. I guess that's just how large it goes. You have a branch in New York, I assume in New York City, since they're the prodigal son of the state that gets all the attention. We have the same situation out here in Long Island suburbs, and you have a couple of Saturdays ago, I marched with Housing for Justice addressing this out here. The source is private equity given money by the Fed in 2008 and 2020, engaging in rent speculation, driving up rent rates. I suggest that we don't tackle this on a municipal basis, but at the state level. What I'm looking at is this may be you help us New Yorkers with outlawing in New York State, and you guys push a ballot initiative in your state to outlaw private equity from owning housing, then transfer ownership to the government. We do that, then this nonsense stops. If you're with this, I'd like to contact your New York branch and get to cracking.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, certainly the just like developments aren't islands, cities aren't islands, and yeah, the more ties we can make with different people, different groups across any of the states we're in, and then in others too, I think that makes sense. And yeah, you're definitely right about private equity is a big problem with the role they play in driving up speculation. Um, uh, this idea of a ballot initiative is interesting. I think there's some limited ability to push things through, things like ballot initiatives and stuff like that. Although I think they're very limited, within this, but and yet I think uh, they can be used in some ways as tools, just like legal like lawsuits and stuff like that can be. But ultimately, the main thing is uniting people and getting people organized, and that can give a lot more force to behind things like ballot initiatives and lawsuits and stuff like that than if they're pursued on their own. But yeah, I mean, I think uh, um, the folks out of New York would love to connect with anybody who wants to struggle against all the different aspects of this gentrification across the state.
Yeah, Roger, I can give you that contact information for them. And thank you for this tip as well, Dave. Dave said, thanks for covering the Sabs and tenant movements in Boston. We fought the banks and bad landlords. Anyone wants to talk housing resistance, drop me a line. Somehow I should put an email here somewhere. Check out this video by local hip hop star Twice Though, who joined the movement, The Bank Attack. Thank you so much for that. And then I have one more question for you here as well. This is from a kid. How do we counter gentrification with a systemic approach using the resources available to the 99%? It's by organizing on the unified goal for natives to remain in the area. So how do we counter gentrification? Gentrification, I think, is very tricky because it depends who is in charge in your local government. So like on the city level, our mayor is Mayor Michelle Wu. She knows about this issue. The mayor before her, Marty Walsh, also knew about this issue and addressed it multiple times, but nothing really changed. Mayor Menino, who was the mayor before him, also knew that this was an issue. And so their response tends to be, we're going to build more affordable housing. But if you're building affordable housing, which we just told you isn't necessarily affordable to a lot of people, depending on their income, but you're still allowing for the developers to come in and build the luxury apartments and condos, you're not really fixing the problem.
Yeah. No, I mean, all these different mayors, they've just been part of the problem with all the different things they've pushed. I mean, and they've directly been involved in pushing forward the privatization of public housing, like all of them. The interim mayor Janey, for the short of the time as she was there, she was out there cheering on wind companies as they try to, as they're trying to take over at McCormick in South Boston. Marty Walsh, of course, and then Menino with all the different things he was doing at the Big Dig. And I mean, I think that's why the key is, like the commentator was saying, it's the people, the rest of the people, not those that end up, in government or otherwise part of this ruling class, because it's their interests fundamentally that are driving this stuff. It's their need to find different avenues for profitable investment as they run the economy to the ground and cause crises, and they're just looking for anything, and that if that means displacing a bunch of people, that's fine by them. Yeah, I mean, I think there's all sorts of outrages going on every day at all, across these places, and the thing that is needed is for even if it at first it's just a couple of people to be that are serious about trying to work together to fight these things, build up forces within developments, but across them, exposing things that are going on, when appropriate, yeah, also using like lawsuits and stuff like that. Protest petitions. It's writing stuff, putting stuff out there to just demonstrate the reality of what's going on and show how false these different narratives that the government and that the developers and that the affordable housing developers push, is how false they are.
Right. It's a big one. I do want to address this really quick before you go, Alfonso. Zach the Celtics guy said, you want cheap housing in Massachusetts compared to the big cities, go to the western part of the state, Pittsfield, Springfield, and so forth. I hear you, Zach. The problem that you run into with this is that most of the jobs are concentrated in Eastern Massachusetts. A lot of the jobs are concentrated in Boston, Cambridge, Somerville. That's a big part of the problem. And I think, unfortunately, some of these tech companies, instead of moving to like a Pittsfield or Springfield in Western Mass, they chose to come to Boston. That's part of the problem too.
Yeah. I mean, people can't just pick up and leave their whole lives just I mean, people are starting to do it, but it's not a good thing that people are forced to do it. But also, I mean, these different cities, yeah, the rents are not as high as in Boston, but the same sort of process is ongoing. And then, I mean, Springfield has a huge crisis with the opioid epidemic that is all kind of related to I mean, like, there's nowhere to run to escape the oppression of this ruling class and their messed up plans for us. I mean, some places will be less bad in some ways than others.
Right.
When you're talking about cities, when you're talking about states, when you're talking about developments, but ultimately everywhere there's a basis for the people, the working people, not the people who aren't part of this ruling class, to come together and to fight the outrages that are ongoing everywhere, even if they're slightly different and slightly more intense in one state, slightly less intense in another. That's
right. That's right. And another thing that can happen too is if people start moving out that way, because I've seen this happen with I guess more affordable cities in the South. If people start moving out that way, you know what's going to happen? Then it's going to get expensive out there too. And Ali just brought up the example of Nashville. Nashville is a perfect example, which was a place that had pretty low cost of living. It became one of the fastest places, growing cities in the East. And now Nashville is starting to get expensive. Same thing happening with Dallas, Texas. Same thing happening with Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Texas, exactly, in Dallas. That's and yeah, things are getting really, really expensive, really, really fast. Not as bad here yet, but it's not a good situation.
That's right. All right, Alonzo, before you go, where can people find United Front Against Displacement on social media?
Yeah, at the UFAD on Twitter, on Instagram. We also have a Facebook. I guess you just look up United Front Against Displacement and you'll find us. Then the UFAD.org is the website. So yeah, that's where you can find us online.
Awesome. Keep up the great work, Alonzo, and thanks so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great. And thank you to the audience, and a shout out to Pastor and T. I know y'all are watching. I saw the comment. All right.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Bye.
All right, guys. Very important information there. Share that with as many people as possible. Gentrification is something that is not easy to resolve or to fix. And it's not just a problem in Boston. Obviously, it's happening all across the country. I do want to go ahead and make sure I shout out these super chats. I don't want to miss those. Thank you so much for the super sticker, JM, who's also a Sabby member. And thank you for the super chat, Jay the Informant. I'm here Walker just owned Warnock in the debate. I forgot that was happening, Jay. I totally forgot about that. I'll have to look for clips on YouTube or something. That is interesting, though. We need critical thinking. Boston residents paid the third highest rent in the country, an average of $4,563.51 per month. Two cities in the Boston metro, Cambridge and Somerville, also cracked the top 10. And I lived in all three of those. I lived in Boston, I lived in Cambridge, I lived in Somerville. They're all expensive. All of them. It's crazy. It's people just get priced out. And thank you for the super chat, Roger Meadows. Quick question on the rock, Sabby. Yeah, I asked that question. So I think that, what can we do, right? Because we don't want to just talk about the problem. What can we do? You need to definitely talk to your mayor about this. Now, Alonzo, that was just on, that's something that organization does a lot. Like when they find out Michelle Wu is going to be speaking and she has these, you can go on their website, you can see all the events they're going to, right? They show up. They show up and tell people, look, you're letting all these private developers come in. People are being pushed out of their apartments. So hold your mayors accountable. They're actually accessible. Believe it or not, you can actually talk to them. And I talked to Michelle Wu. I had that video on this channel a couple months ago where I went to one of the events and UFAD was there. Pastor John Wheeler and his daughter were there. And yeah, we confronted her about the housing issue. So talk to your mayors, talk to your city councilors, because sometimes the city councilors are actually working with the mayors more on a consistent basis. So sometimes if you don't have time to reach your mayor, the city councilors tend to be pretty reachable for the most part, at least from my experience. Talk to them, but you got to get people to come out and make the case for it and complain. You have to continue to complain about it. And I think, they're starting to see the real issue that this is an urgent issue, because now you have escalating homelessness, you have people still being evicted, and then you have to deal with the situation that there were migrants that were sent to Massachusetts. And now they're like, oh, now we have more people. Where are we going to house them? And so, it's been a problem for a long time. I've been here for over 11 years. I have not seen rent get better. I haven't seen it improve. I haven't seen gentrification improve. And there's no one stopping it. There's no one jumping in and saying, okay, that's it. This is the maximum number of developments that we're going to allow to come in. Nobody's doing that. And a lot of these mayors or a lot of these mayor candidates, when they're running, they talk a good game about affordable housing and the housing issue. But if you notice, if you pay close attention, a lot of times they do not mention the word gentrification. And that is just as much a part of the problem. And we just told you about in reference to affordable housing. Affordable for who? A lot of times that is based off of the median income. And it's not just the median income in Boston, it's over a certain amount of area. So if a lot of people don't even make that median income, the affordable housing isn't even affordable for them. And people are just getting more pushed and more out. And it's a problem. And you see the changes within the city. I mean, for me, look, Boston is not a working class city anymore. If you've never been here, I have to tell you that. It's not. These movies that you see about Boston, like The Departed, Good Will Hunting, that Boston does not exist. I have to make that clear, because Hollywood wants you to think it's mainly a playground for professionals. That's what it has become. And a lot of the people that grew up in those neighborhoods in Boston, in those working class neighborhoods, those people have either been pushed out to the North Shore, the South Shore, or to Metro West. Just got to keep it real. Got to keep it real. All right. Quick shout out to Sabby patrons. I want to go ahead and shout you guys out for doing the damn thing. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in becoming a patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. They're also scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the support. You really do help me a lot here, especially with all this technical equipment. But I want to give a big shout out to everyone who is a Sabby newbie, new patrons here. We call them newbies. Shout out to Mava Yao and Richard Scott. Whoop, whoop. Thank you guys so much and welcome to the club. All right. What are we talking about tonight? Let me go ahead and share my thumbnail here. Here we go. Okay, tonight we are discussing Aaron Mate and Tucker Carlson, Ukraine funds. Interesting interview there. I'm actually going to do a dive into what has happened here with the squad and why they're voting the way that they are, which is what they talk about in that interview. I'm also going to discuss Russell Brand grills Bill Gates, and he has every right to do so. We're going to talk about the amount of wealth that Bill Gates has and what he's doing with it and why we should be concerned. And of course, Alonzo was just here and we talked about gentrified Boston. So here we go. Let's dive in. We're going to get started here with this story from Russell Brand. Now, the name of this video is called Bill Gates Has What Under His Properties. And this goes back to something that I talked about before on RBN about if times got even more dire in the United States, who will be protected and who will not? And the people that will be protected will be those who are that 1%, the billionaires, some of these millionaires, and of course, your politicians. So your congressmen and women, your senators, president of the United States, those people will also be protected. Bill Gates is one of those people who has pretty much made sure that he will be protected, his family will be protected, and he's shown it in more than one way. I've talked about his farmland issue, which I'm going to show you a screenshot of that in a second after this vid. But we also need to talk about where will Bill Gates be able to go if we were to face some type of a nuclear war here in the United States. Bill Gates would still be protected. And Russell Brand dives into that. Let's get into that clip.
That crises are being used to further impecuniate, if that's a word, poor people and enhance the lives of rich and powerful institutions and groups. Like the 2008 stock market crash was ultimately beneficial for the financial industry. The pandemic was ultimately beneficial for the most powerful people in the world. The richest people in the world got richer. So for some institutions, it wasn't a crisis at all. Is it conceivable that even nuclear Armageddon could be part of a crisis response solution mentality? Firstly, let's have a look at some of these bunkers that are available for Bill Gates and his billionaire buddies.
So before we get to that part right there, I do just want to interrupt for a second and say this. You notice how he said we talked about these different crises that have happened in the United States and how American people have suffered. But what he points out, which I think is really good that he did this, some people didn't suffer. For some people, they were actually able to profit during those crises. Some people profit during the pandemic. Did they not? You had CEOs whose wealth doubled during the pandemic, while other people were just trying to figure out how they were going to buy groceries. Even when you look at the housing crisis, the banks, for the most part, they were rescued. But the people who lost their homes to the predatory lenders were not. This is why it's important to always bring it back to the class issue. If people tell me you shouldn't focus on class, it's not really a big thing, I call BS on that. Because the rich will always be protected. Whether it's the police that protect them or whether it's the power that they have because of the money that they have that will protect them. Always remember that. Let's go back in.
Tell you, they're actually fucking lovely.
No one knows exactly what the future has in store.
Don't they?
But one startup company says avoiding threats from any potential natural disasters, viruses, and wars doesn't have to come at the expense of your comfort.
Yeah, why should I give up my comfort just because there's a virus and a nuclear war? I should be able to relax. There's another few million people dead. See what's on the telly. Repeats again. Why is no one making any new content? Oh.
This is an Oppidum, a type of luxury doomsday bunker that could soon be underneath the mansions of some of the world's richest people.
I suppose what this makes me feel is that there are different strata of society. That's no surprise. We knew that already. Even anyone who lives modestly well is still doing better than someone in a homeless shelter or sleeping on the street. So I accept that there are different strata of society. But at a time when it seems possible that we could radically revise the way we live, look at alternative systems where we empower communities differently, to double down on elitism, to double down on the idea that we should create a class of individuals that are free from the consequences of the way that society is sliding, seems to me to be distasteful.
Something else I want to mention here too, when we talk about the pandemic, for example, if there is another pandemic, and they have these bunkers, they can just go to their bunkers. Some of these bunkers, and I did a story about this before on RBN, some of these bunkers is all set up for food, doctors, just in case they need to be treated for any type of illness. Everything that they need, they have tucked away in those bunkers. So if we have another pandemic, instead of them having to or trying to quarantine, or let's say it was worse than the last one that we have, they can just go to their bunkers. Just like that. They don't have to worry about going to work because they're rich. They don't have to work. But we will have to face the pandemic. Just like last time. Something to keep in mind.
Is the Latin term for fortified settlement, and that's exactly what this is and much more. Company officials say each bunker is air and gas tight.
So that you can just literally seal yourself off from the world.
Yep.
Now, in a way, this is already happening. I have a much better lifestyle than a lot of people. I recognize that. But the idea that our plan for the future ought to be to create citadels for the super rich at a point in history where really what's required is a new model altogether is almost beyond parody and is certainly grotesque.
Allowing those inside to be completely cut off from the atmosphere outside for up to a month.
Completely cut off from the atmosphere outside for up to a month. So even if there is an airborne virus per se, they will still be protected.
Though after a month. Oh, hello everybody. Listen, does anybody know where I can get some rainwater? Hey, what are you doing with that bone sword?
The shelters are also armed with the technology to make their own water, air, and energy while coming with the chicest amenities.
In a way, that's all.
Let's go back to this point because I'm going to point out something here in reference to what they could do for people right now.
What are you going to do, though, after a month? Oh, hello, everybody. Listen, does anybody know where I can get some rainwater? Hey, what are you doing with that bone sword?
The shelters are also armed with the technology to make their own water, air, and energy.
To make their own water, air, and energy. If they have this technology right now to do that for their bunkers, then why aren't they using that same technology to do the same thing for people in Jackson, Mississippi right now? Why aren't they using that technology to help make water for people in Jackson, Mississippi? Because they don't have clean water. This is the problem. This is the problem here with capitalism. They have the technology, they have the resources, but they keep it to themselves. Greed. If I had that type of technology, I would let other people use it who need it right now. So it doesn't matter. And this is the point I got to drive home. You know, I get pretty tired of people saying Bill Gates donates to philanthropy. Bill Gates has a scholarship for African-American students. Bill Gates did this. Bill Gates did that. I don't care what philanthropy Bill Gates has. By the way, he gets a tax write-off for that. I don't care what philanthropy he has. When he has technology that could actually make water and give people clean air, and he's not sharing that with the people who need it right now. So his scholarship fund that he has for African American students, what good does that do if you don't have clean water? Which is more important? Do you know how many jobs he could create with that? So you don't get a pass, Bill. You don't get a pass just because you have a couple of philanthropies that you can write off at tax season. Because the most vital resource, which we all need, which is water, you have technology that can create that. And you're not willing to share that with the people who need it right now. I have to say that out there for the Bill Gates simps, and there are many, believe it or not.
Coming with the chicest amenities.
In a way, that's already happening. If you think during the pandemic, I think one of the things that many people felt is that ordinary people were being forced to live by a lot of restrictive regulations. You can't leave your house, you must wear a mask, you must take certain medications. And I think there was a strong sense that that wasn't affecting everybody in the same way, that some people were traveling around privately, still going to gatherings. I mean, this isn't hypothetical. We know in our country, the UK, Prime Minister and high-up politicians were literally having parties. We know that in your country, America, the California governor held events. I'm saying that the pandemic was clearly a divisive time that negatively impacted certain sectors of society more than others. Let me know if you agree with that in the comments. Let me know if you agree in the chat.
Whatever is happening in the world outside, you can rest easy.
What type of moral centre is implied by the statement, no matter what's going on in the world outside, you can rest easy? Oh, look at that. Another child dying of radiation sickness. The gardener doesn't look well. Oh, look at that. Algeria just sank into the sea. Like, you can't rest easy. What kind of person are you if you can tolerate and cope with Armageddon just because you've got a decent wine cellar?
And live fully.
But they can, Russell. Some people can rest easy. Some people, and think about it this way. Think about the people who are rich, wealthy, who have no problem or not a care in the world about the kids that are being killed abroad, who have no problem or not a care in the world about the kids who are suffering in Afghanistan because of the sanctions, who are starving, about the people that are left in Yemen to live in the rubble, about the people who have lost their lives in Somalia. And I know it because I've met those people. I've met the people that didn't care about the people being killed in Syria because it wasn't them. I've met the people who made these comments where they said, not my family, not my problem. Believe it or not. There are a lot of selfish people in this country. I've told you before, we don't have community here. We really don't. People here have an individual mindset for the most part. And people are basically taught that they have to look out for themselves and do for themselves. That's American culture. So the same way those people can turn the other cheek to kids being killed and murdered and not care, the same way they can turn the other cheek knowing that there are people outside that bunker that are dying. The same way. As long as they're safe, they'll be fine.
If you can tolerate and cope with Armageddon just because you've got a decent wine cellar.
And live fully in times of tranquility and in times of unrest.
He's actually literally having a cigar in there. Fuck 'em.
Entertain friends and enjoy private time with your family.
Who are these friends you're entertaining? They're all dead, unless all your friends are super. Oh, look, the Joneses are coming by. Well, they seem to have a weird look on their faces, though, as they...
Well, their friends will be there because their friends are rich just like them. Not too many rich folk hanging out with poor people.
Stagger blindly towards the front door, screaming the word brains, brains, again and again. And as for private time with your family, that's all you got now. You're 24/7 in your luxury prison, staring at your family who you hate because they've got no morals.
Beautifully appointed and entirely bespoke.
What this feels like to me is that the most powerful interests in the world are willing to crash the planet knowing they would survive it. And if you think that sounds crazy, look at what they did to the economy. They crashed it knowing that they would be okay. Look at what happened in the pandemic. They locked down the whole planet knowing they would be okay. I'm not suggesting...
That's right. They always knew in the end that they would be fine. That's a big part of the problem. They knew that they were going to be okay. Always remember that, guys.
I think the lockdown wasn't a necessary measure or that the vaccines weren't ultimately helpful. I'm just suggesting that this is a stratified society where people making the decisions do not suffer the consequences of the decisions that they're making. And now it's taken to a ridiculous extreme. See that zombie hellscape, son? That used to be Madrid.
Or just savor having a safe place to reflect.
What are you going to reflect on? Well, that went well for us. Daddy, was that the right thing to let everyone else die? Let me reflect on that.
I'm sorry, that's a good point. Why do you need a room to reflect on? Reflect on what?
It was, yeah. These priceless works of art that they've accumulated. Even the value of art is contextual. It's like these are what human beings have achieved. You can't like look at a Matisse or a Picasso knowing that all of the values that art is funded upon a connection to something sublime and divine. They're all gone now. That's all gone. It's just you in your mansion with essentially nothing.
Your private gallery keeps your collections in perfect condition.
Why do you need art? What the hell? If you're underground in this bunker, what? See, this is rich people shit. Like, I'm sorry. And no offense, if you're watching and you're rich, you know if I'm talking about you or not. But come on, let's be real. Like, who does this? These are the kind of things that, like, working class people don't need this shit. Like, come on. You're in underground under a bunker and you need to have sculptures around you too. For what? Who's coming over? Who's coming over that isn't already there? Check out my new art collection over here. Check out this statue. I bought that and such and such. Who's coming to see you? Ay.
Freedom is the possession of those with courage to defend it. I don't think what Pericles meant by that is why don't we all bunker down and fuck society. I don't think classical Greece was founded on every man for himself. Let's hunker down, bunker down. Let's create foundations that fund media and pharmaceutical companies and non-democratic global bodies that infiltrate and interrupt the democratic process. Democracy, I think, was quite important to the Greeks.
Wondering if an Alpidum is in reach for you?
Not really, because they're going to cost fucking fortune, aren't they?
Well, officials say if you have a net worth of more than $100 million...
But is that sarcastic news? Is that what sarcastic news is? Because look, here's what happened. Billionaires added $5 trillion to their fortunes during the pandemic. That happened. The world's richest 10 men saw their collective wealth more than double, shooting up by 1.3 billion a day. The ranks of the global ultra-high net worth individuals swelled by 46,000 last year to a record 218,000 as the world's richest people benefited from almost an explosion of...
That was during the pandemic. You see this? While other people were getting laid off, while other people, if you lived in a state that was shut down, people lost their mom and pop businesses because they were shut down for so long and weren't making a profit. While those other people were struggling and suffering, rich people just got richer.
Wealth during the recovery from the pandemic. It makes me wonder if events are being constructed in order to facilitate the capture of wealth. Whether that's something like a foreign war that allows taxes of ordinary people to ultimately end up in the hands of private military contractors, that's generally what happens, or a pandemic that enhances the wealth of big tech and big pharma. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that they planned these kind of things. Let me know in the comments, let me know in the chat. I'm not saying that. But if a system benefits people up to the point where they can survive a nuclear apocalypse, and it ultimately don't make no difference because they're at the precipice of an AI revolution where you don't need what would be referred to as a working class anymore, then what's the reason to not have a nuclear war? I really enjoy this guy's videos. He's
he slid that part in there. But it's true. If they're at that point and they're in these bunkers, They don't need a working class. Think about it. Have you guys ever watched Star Trek Next Generation? If you haven't, check it out. Check it out. You may think you don't like Star Trek, but I only like that one. Only that one. I don't like the old one that my mom loves, where the guy in the red shirt always dies. And I didn't like the newer ones. I really couldn't get into Deep Space Nine. The Voyager one, I couldn't really get into either. I tried, but I always go back to Star Trek Next Generation. And notice in Star Trek Next Generation, they don't really need the working class. They don't need waiters really or anything like that. They have a machine. I forget what it's called, but they had a machine that just makes the food for you. So you don't have to sit there and cook. They got rid of money. Money is not like a thing. I don't want to give the whole show away, but money is not like a thing. So if you get to the point where you feel like you don't need the working class anymore, are you going to try to do your best to make sure that they stay around? Probably not.
Brilliant, isn't he? But wouldn't you like even more of him? As you know, we are streaming every day on Rumble at these times. Now, if you are a fan of our podcast, Under the Skin, you've got to become a member of Stay Free AF. That is our...
Oh, yeah, I did forget to mention, or maybe I did mention this before, but Russell Brand is live streaming on Rumble now because of because like one of his videos was censored. Let me get back to the point here in reference to, yeah, there we go.
Usually when we ponder this apocalyptic breakdown, we involve Skynet, don't we? The robots realised they didn't need people no more and they might as well have a nuclear war. Well, now it's like the billionaires have realised they don't need people anymore and they might as well have a nuclear war.
Unseen and untouched. To protect the people we love and the objects we cherish is the most powerful.
Look at all the green, look at the veggies, look at this.
Powerful human instinct.
It's not, is it? The most powerful human instinct is meant to be to survive and love. And I suppose that's a version of survival, but sprinkling little bits of bunker-grown basil on your sunny side up eggs while the rest of society is dying doesn't seem like the optimum outcome for a human life, does it?
Your oppidum is the only...
Mummy, Daddy, why's all my friends dead? Well, we sent you to a state-funded school because we wanted you to occasionally meet Mexican people so that you could be woke. But when it came to the crunch, goodbye. Turns out we got a robot to make our eggs now.
Designed and constructed to withstand ballistic, environmental, and civil threats.
And in a sense, their economic model can withstand that also. So it's, in a way, a real-life metaphor for what we're already experiencing. There is a culture that is behind a wall. And most of us are kind of trained to believe that that's normal and acceptable somehow. But it isn't. It's such a peculiar perversion of what we're evolved to live like. It amounts to an abomination. So their bomb shelters are an abomination. And the idea that this is in any way normal or acceptable or could be on the news without provoking a revolution is extraordinary.
This is security without sacrifice. Comfort without compromise.
Compromise and sacrifice are exactly the values that we need to get in touch with. We have to realize that you can't achieve anything without sacrifice. If you're not willing to sacrifice, you don't have any principles. That's what virtue signaling is. It's principles without sacrifice. I believe in this. Are you willing to give up something for it? No. Sacrifice is a necessity. Until you're willing to sacrifice, you don't have principles. It's one of the questions I level at myself most. Yes. How much are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up? And it's actually tears me apart a little bit how addicted to comfort I am. But compromise and sacrifice are what we need to learn, not what we need to negate. It's their negation that has led us to this peripheral insanity, to this precipice of Armageddon.
What are you willing to sacrifice? That's a good question. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are rich people willing to sacrifice? Or are they willing to sacrifice anything? Anything? Because if I had a bunker like that, why wouldn't you invite others, people who can't afford to have it? Why not build more of them for people who can't afford to have it instead of just keeping it to yourself? That's something they should reflect on, I think. Something they should really think about. This is why I tell people not to praise rich people. And some people say like, oh, Sabby, you're always talking about like, you're mean about rich people. Like, no, just don't worship them. Don't praise them. Don't idolize them. Because when shit hits a fan, they're going to look out for themselves first. Most of them will. Most of them will not look out for the people who can't afford to have those things. And these little charities that they have here and there is just another way for them to say, see, look, I help the unfortunate people. But if you really want to help the unfortunate people, like I said, why aren't you using that technology to create water for people who don't have clean water instead of keeping the technology for yourself?
Oppidum.
The name of their company, Oppidum, sounds like an idiot saying, sorry, I blew up the world. Oppidum, Oppidum, I blew up your planet. Oppidum, it's okay, because we can grow those plants under the ground now. Oppidum, it's okay, I scrapped a Picasso from the ashes.
And can shell out at least $10 million for a bunker. Could be yours.
Why are the media telling this like it's a normal story about, look at this crazy new thing, rather than, okay, here's clear evidence that society is falling apart and the most powerful people in the world don't give a fuck about you. Because all the people you see on the news, whether it's from an influential perspective or a political perspective or a corporate perspective, they're the sort of people that will be in these bunkers. I mean, I'm a normal human, I'm a person, I think, oh shit, you kind of would, wouldn't you? You're like, that's not the instinct or aspect of our nature we should be cultivating. The news should be saying, listen, we're in real trouble now. The most powerful people in the world are beginning to prepare for the day when viruses and ballistic missiles and environmental threat destroy the planet. So there's probably something in it. So is this an amusing news story, or is this a harrowing window into where we are heading? If they're preparing, we should be preparing, but in an entirely different way. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think. Comment in the...
Okay, he's right. If they're preparing, then we should be preparing as well. This is why we had people come on to teach you how to grow your own food, even if you don't have a yard. Logan grows his own food, didn't have a yard. Like, there's ways that you can grow things, even if you live in an apartment, which a lot of people do live in apartments. This is why we've been talking about these things. This is why we have people come on that actually know how to build, like shelter. This is why we've done those things. This is why we have people come on to teach you how to do basic, well, they're supposed to be basic life skills in the event something happens. We cannot sit back and depend on the grocery store. We cannot sit back and depend on our vehicles, our cars. You may not always be able to use it. And one of the things that I will say that I had to come around to, because I was not always a fan of camping. And then one summer, I was a camp counselor. I took a camp counselor job. It paid really well. I'm not going to lie. The job paid well, and I had to pay for my books. So I took a camp counselor job. And what I will say, it was really roughing it. There's no AC or anything like that in the cabins. And we had cabins, and then we had tents. So sometimes we were in the tent, sometimes we were in the cabin, and it was in North Carolina. During the summer, it was hot. But one thing I can tell you about camping that it teaches you is how to do things without relying on the technology that we have. I know how to build a fire. I know how to cook over a fire. I don't know how to build shelter. That's something I still have to learn. So if need be, I know how to do enough to get by if I was stuck out in the wild somewhere. And so we have to teach each other these things. And that's what we did when we went to Camp Data. That video should be uploaded soon, by the way. We did a skills sharing sessions. And different people at the camp taught people how to do different things. And you guys are going to see that. But you'd be surprised the number of people that I've met that don't know how to build a fire. That's a basic. Because if you're stranded and you don't know how to build a fire, that's something you need. Dehydration and hypothermia can get you. So you have to be hydrated. Do you know what to do if you don't have bottled water? You're near water. lake or pond, but you can't drink that, right? Do you know how to fix that problem so that you can drink it? You boil it. But that means you still have to know how to build a fire. You see where I'm getting at? So these are the things that we need to teach each other how to do. And that's why I will say, like, one of the best ways to get there or to start out is by camping. Just going camping so you can learn those things. Now, we talked about Bill Gates, and I did tell you, sorry, I'm without Eric tonight, so I'm a little all over the place, but I did tell you that I was going to show you this information here about the farmland. And it says, why is Bill Gates buying so much farmland, right? So there's one part down here that I want to highlight. I'm not going to go through this entire article because I have talked about this before. But right here, it says, why farmland? Let me make this bigger for you guys. This is important. Why farmland? Why now? So what's the interest in farmland and why now after years of massive success? Peep this. Farmland is what is known as an alternative asset, an investment that can grow wealth outside of the stock market. When it comes to alternative assets, there are a few options investors can look at, such as real estate, fine art, foreign stocks, crypto, even NFTs. Verdict is still out on the NFTs. It goes on to say one main benefit to alternative asset, especially for those who are heavily invested in the stock market, is you can diversify your overall investment portfolio outside of the New York Stock Exchange. This is especially helpful if, say, the stock market crashed and you had a more aggressive stock portfolio or any large stake in stock at all. Think about how much Bill Gates would have lost if he hadn't diversified in 1999. Where farmland differs from other alternative assets is that because it is such a crucial human resource, food equals humans, in less than desirable economic situation, farmland tends to appreciate even further in value as opposed to losing value. So there you go. That's why Bill Gates is buying up all this farmland. It appreciates more in value. He's making himself richer. That greedy bastard. All right, I'm gonna go to some of the comments here, and then I am going to get to our next story, which it looks like a lot of you are waiting for that story. Shout out to Zach. Thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on the mass governor election? Think Maura Healey is going to solve this issue? Doubt it. She is with the establishment. No question about it. I don't think she's going to solve it. I don't like Maura Healey. I think she's ridiculous. I really do not like her. I wish there was someone else that was better that's running, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen either. It's just, she's an awful, awful choice. She's corporate and she backs corporate. Thank you for the super chat at Kid. Sabby, hopefully RBN develops a plan for a public speaking event tour in 2023 to discuss living wages, housing, Medicare for all, and more. We'll get there, a Kid. The biggest thing for us is resources. Like, we don't have the funds for that. So once we get the resources, we'll be able to do that. Thank you so much for the super sticker, JM. Jay, these elite bastards finally caught on to the fact that they had to stop wearing humongous gold headdresses and put jade beads in their teeth. Ad Kid, yes, 100% Sabby. It's part of the U.S. empire DNA culture to go for itself. It's part of the reason parents aren't sent to elderly homes. Are sent to elderly homes. Why we don't save money and why we live paycheck to paycheck. It's true. It is true. Where? Have you followed up with Glenn Greenwald on his offer to interview you on his Rumble show at Sabby Sabs? Oh, you just reminded me. Thank you for the reminder. Thank you so much for that. I forget things a lot. Where I see you were on Twitter, apparently. Yeah, I forget. But thank you for the reminder. Thanks for the super chat. Teresa, we are essentially powerless. It takes 3.5% of a population, 12 million, to change a government. But all we do is talk instead of organizing coalitions. Hashtag 50 state, 12 million demanding representation. Well said, Teresa. Well said. Actually, there's an organization. We're going to try to see if we can get them for the activist summit. They're really busy. There's an organization called Cooperation Jackson. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, but they're doing a lot of the things that we do, but they do it on an even bigger scale. Like they have worker co-ops, they do mutual aid, and like they are very organized and they have more people. But we're still going to try to see if we can get them for the activist summit, because that will be a really important organization for people to hear from, so people can understand how they did it, so that people can do the same thing. So I'm going to try. We're still trying to work on that to see if we can get them to come on, because that's a really good group that people need to hear about. Okay, Rockfin. I don't want to forget that. Like I said, I'm by myself tonight. I'm flying solo. I think that was a song by Jason Derulo. Didn't he say that? I'm flying solo. Or maybe that was someone else. I don't know. I told you I'm not good with new music. Let me pull this out here. All right. Make sure I got one here. I think I got everybody. Nope, I'm missing one. So let me go ahead and share that one. I'm flying solo. I think that's the song. Okay, here we go. Okay, thank you for the tip on Rockfin. Where am I? Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. That's okay, Sabrina. We got people like Moses West, who refuses to sell his atmospheric water system. That does the same thing. Make H2O out of humidity because of climate change. We have a lot of too corporate out of fear. What? We have a lot to corporate out of fear. They will price it beyond the communities. He's trying to help ability to pay. Is sharing his technology with Jackson, Flint, and whoever else needs it. Donate to the Moses West Foundation. Yes, this is a good foundation for you guys to contribute to. I reached out to them to see if they could come on, because it'd be great if they could come on for the activist summit too. But I'll check again with them. But thank you so much for that. And thank you for the tip on Rockfin JVB. And thank you for this tip as well, Roger. This is exactly how we FBA freedmen, when we lost our wealth by having our land taken from us and chased out of the South, because they knew the wealth that owning land has. And thank you so much for that. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our final story tonight. Make sure I don't miss any of these. I don't want to miss those. I don't want to miss those. I don't want to close my eyes. I don't know where that came from. Don't want to fall asleep. All right. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, guys. I think something just lit up. Yeah. Usually Eric does this, but Eric is off tonight, so I'm just checking this stuff. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Giovanni. And thank you for this super sticker, Giovanni. I love that name. Thank you for the super chat, Teresa. No, Bill Gates is heavily invested in toxic GMO foods and bioweapons. Hashtag he who controls the food controls the world. Well said, Teresa. And shout out to Bill Cunningham for becoming a Sabby member. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. All right, Bill, doing the thing. That's how we greet members here, Bill. All right, let's get into our final story tonight. So If you have not seen this, you will see this now. Now, Aaron Mate was recently on Tucker Carlson's show. Yes, he was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. For the people who are going to come at me and say, why do people always go on Fox News? I don't know. Maybe they're not being invited on CNN or MSNBC. So, but Tucker Carlson had him come on to talk about Ukraine funding, specifically in reference to why the progressives are complicit with it and why they're not speaking up against it. And I think that's a fair question. And we've been talking about that as well. We've talked about it on RBN. It's noticeable. We see you. And it's not the only thing that they've done, that they haven't been doing what they should do. So I'm going to play this clip of this interview with Aaron Mate and Tucker Carlson. And then we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive and see exactly what went wrong here with these Justice Democrats in particular. We're going to take a look at what they were supposed to be doing according to the pledge that they signed. And we're going to take a look at whether or not they're actually even socialist. So we're going to put all that together and we're going to get an answer here. So let's go ahead and play this clip. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip here. And here we go.
So where are the real liberals? Where are the real progressives? Well, Aaron Mate seems like one of them. He works the gray zone. He's on to this. He joins us tonight. Aaron Mate, thanks so much for coming on. So we don't spend a ton of time worrying about the state of the progressive movement because I'm speaking for myself, not a progressive. But it would be nice to have an actual progressive stand up and point out that this is truly nuts. Where are they?
Look, Tucker, I'm someone who was very inspired by the squad when all of them first ran. I think all of them have shown courage, and I agree with the domestic policies that they support, especially Medicare for all. And also, I'm a big fan of Chapo Trap House. I'm seeing their live show tomorrow. But right now, overall, the progressive movement, when it comes to the most important issue in the world, is dead. We have a proxy war against a nuclear armed power. The active U.S. policy, as Lloyd Austin made clear, is not to defend Ukraine. It's to weaken Russia. People like Lindsey Graham have said out loud that as long as we arm Ukraine, they will fight to the last person. And where are progressives on this? Every single time the Ukraine proxy war has come up for a vote, they voted in lockstep for it. Every single Democrat, including Bernie Sanders. Even as
That's right. Let's go back to the beginning here because there's something I noticed that Tucker Carlson did, and I want to correct Tucker Carlson on that. See, sometimes people talk fast and these things aren't noticed. Listen to this.
So where are the real liberals? Where are the real progressives? Well, Aaron Mate seems like one of them.
Okay. He said, where are the real liberals? Where are the real progressives? Where are the liberals? Where are the progressives? Listen to this. Make sure I'm hearing this correctly. And actually shoot balls. Balls. I'm going to have to use volume booster here. In order to do that, you have to play it and then...
So where are the real liberals? Where are the real progressives? Well, Aaron Mate seems like one of them. He works the gray zone. He's on to this. He joins...
That was a little too loud. Oh, well, here we are. Listen to what he says.
So where are the real liberals? Where are the real progressives? Well, Aaron Mate...
So where are the real liberals? Where are the real progressives? Problem number one. Liberal and progressive is not the same thing. And I have to say this because the number of times I've seen them do this on Fox News where they make it seem like liberal and progressive and liberal and left is the same thing. It's not the same thing. So let me break this down. Liberals are fine with the status quo. They may be good on some social issues. They may agree that, yeah, people should be able to marry whoever they want. They may agree on that. They may agree that it's a woman's right to choose. But when it comes to actually reforming the system or tearing the system down and rebuilding the system, they're not with that. Liberals aren't into that. They're fine with the status quo. Liberals, for the most part, don't have an issue with these politicians accepting corporate money. For the most part, they don't. And you'll hear them make comments like, that's the way it's always been done. Actually, it hasn't always been that way, but probably in their lifetime. So I have to say this because I've seen Fox News do this often where they try to use those words interchangeably. They're not the same. Had to do that. Sorry. Had to go there. All right. Let's go back in.
Mate seems like one of them. He works for the gray zone. He's on to this. He joins us tonight. Aaron Mate, thanks so much for coming on. So we don't spend a ton of time worrying about the state of the progressive movement because I'm speaking for myself, not a progressive. But it would be nice to have an actual progressive stand up and point out that this is truly nuts. Where are they?
Look, Tucker, I'm someone who was very inspired by the squad when all of them first ran. I think all of them have shown courage, and I agree with the domestic policies that they support, especially Medicare for all. And also...
Okay. So Aaron Mate just said, look, I supported the progressives in Congress. I agreed with the policies, the domestic ones that they ran on Medicare for all. So this isn't someone who was a squad hater from the beginning. Like a lot of us, we're not squad haters in the beginning. We supported them. And I will go on further to say that out of all the people that after Force the Vote were like, a lot of us were just like, screw this, man. They're fake. They're frauds. They're not who they said they were. Aaron Mate was not one of those people. So he gave them more of a chance than some of us did. He gave them more of a chance than I did, basically. And when I interviewed him last year, I did ask him about the squad. And he did say that, yeah, there's some things where they've messed up, but he also felt like they were given too much harsher criticism. But now even he sees the problem with the squad. What does that tell you, you guys? What does that tell you? Let's go on. I'm going to go deeper into that in a second.
I'm a big fan of Chapo Trap House. I'm seeing their live show tomorrow. But right now, overall, the progressive movement, when it comes to the most important issue in the world, is dead. We have a proxy war against a nuclear armed power. The active U.S. policy, as Lloyd Austin made clear, is not to defend Ukraine, it's to weaken Russia. People like Lindsey Graham have said out loud that as long as we arm Ukraine, they will fight to the last person. And where are progressives on this? Every single time the Ukraine proxy wars come up for a vote, they voted in lockstep for it. Every single Democrat, including Bernie Sanders.
Including Bernie Sanders. They all have voted for it. The progressives. And we're going to break down this progressive ideology after this clip because I'm going to tell you why that's problematic according to what they signed on to.
As news has come out that the U.S. has sabotaged peace talks, even as Joe Biden, as you just played, openly says he won't negotiate with Russia to end this war. There is no force in Washington right now for sanity, calling for diplomacy, which I thought is what being a progressive is supposed to be about. And you saw in that clip a very angry expression from those protesters feeling let down by their progressive elected representatives.
Yeah. He's referring to the clip that we talked about last night where Jose stood up and called out AOC for, supporting funding Ukraine. That's the clip that he's referring to. But here's something here. Listen to this again. This piece right here. Hope I didn't pull it back too far.
Is what being a progressive is supposed to be about. And you saw in that clip
is what being a progressive is supposed to be about. This piece right here.
Force in Washington right now for sanity, calling for diplomacy, which I thought is what being a progressive is supposed to be about. And you saw
calling for diplomacy, what being a progressive is supposed to be about. They've definitely strayed. They've definitely strayed away from what's considered progressive. And I told you guys again, whether Jose was a Tulsi supporter or not, that still doesn't mean that his criticism against AOC was incorrect. His criticism against AOC was correct. So when he told AOC, you're supposed to be a progressive socialist with the question mark at the end, he had every right to ask that question. Because how could you support this? Let's go on.
On that clip, a very angry expression from those protesters feeling let down by their progressive elected representatives.
Yeah, I mean, if Marjorie Taylor Greene is more anti-war than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she is, then we're an upside-down world. Like, this is true craziness. Will this change, or is she in for as long as it takes, too?
And if Marjorie Taylor Greene can stand up and say those things and speak out, and by the way, from what I've seen, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been removed from committee assignments. Not Kirsten Sinema, not Joe Manchin, even though they've sabotaged legislation all last year. They haven't been, Joe Manchin hasn't been removed from any committee assignments. Marjorie Taylor Greene has, and she still says what she wants to say. She does what she wants to do, and she says what she wants to say, but I'm supposed to sit here and believe that the members of the squad can't speak up?
Well, look, a major problem in the Democratic Party has been the propaganda campaign known as Russiagate. For 6 years, Democrats have been taught to believe that Russia is an existential enemy that can brainwash millions of Americans into not supporting Hillary Clinton and swinging elections. And now, accordingly, when it comes to this proxy war, that there's no point in negotiating with them, even though, by the way, Russiagate has been used to undermine a progressive agenda, not just being used to funnel billions of dollars into the military-industrial complex, but also has been used to sabotage progressive candidates. Remember Bernie Sanders? Bernie Sanders in 2016 came very close to winning the Democratic Party nomination. Hillary Clinton lost that race to Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton responded by blaming Russia for everything and concocting a conspiracy theory that Trump was a Russian asset. Bernie Sanders, instead of calling that out, went along with it, and he was rewarded in 2020 when he was surging in the primaries before Nevada. He was Russiagated. Some leaks were made that were accusing Russia of supporting him. So that's how the Democratic Party rewards even progressives who are loyal to their agenda. And if that doesn't wake them up, then maybe the increasing prospect of nuclear war should.
Let's talk about that piece there for just a second. The piece about, oh, that was a bad place to stop it, but here we go. Let's talk about that piece that he just mentioned about the Democrat loyalty in reference to Russiagate, right? Russiagate was something that was used also, I would add, as an excuse as to why Hillary Clinton didn't win. We'll add that in there as well. And also, yes, it was used as a piece, as a tool to stop progressive voices. It was used as a piece to stop someone like Bernie Sanders. That was just another thing to use against him, right? If you pay close attention to what happened during that time, I will tell you the reason why the squad isn't speaking up is because they don't want the Democratic Party to do what they did to Tulsi Gabbard to them. Because let's all go back and remember 2016 campaign. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard did not support Hillary Clinton. When it came time for her to announce her endorsement, she endorsed Bernie Sanders. Do you think the Democratic Party liked that? You think the DNC liked that? No. They were pretty much grooming her to be the future of the White House. They really wanted to put Tulsi there. She was supposed to be their darling DNC. So when Tulsi Gabbard did what they did not want her to do, and she endorsed Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, what happened to Tulsi Gabbard after that? Then she even still tried to run for president in 2020. Democratic Party and won. Nothing to do with Tulsi Gabbard after that. Nothing. The squad doesn't want the Democratic Party to do what they did to Cynthia McKinney to them. You see, the people who do speak up and out more often, I don't want to say just once, I'm talking about more often, those people are gone. And if they don't push you out, or if they don't kick you out by having someone primary against you, you end up leaving on your own because you can't deal with it anymore. So I give props to Cynthia McKinney, for reals. because she knew. And she's been on there multiple times. She'll tell you she knew what was up. She had been there long enough to see. That's why you don't see them speaking out about it. Because at the end of the day, they still want to have a career in the Democratic Party. They still want that salary. They still want those book deals. They still want that lifestyle. And they know if they're going to have a future in the Democratic Party, there's just certain things they're not going to be able to speak out on. Now, don't get me wrong. When I showed you the way that they voted, there were some times where they did not vote in lockstep with Nancy Pelosi. But trust, those were approved. Notice you never see them vote against Nancy Pelosi or not go along with Nancy Pelosi when their vote can actually matter, when their vote can actually impact and affect legislation. You never see them do it. Not once. Name one. When have they used their leverage to hold up legislation that should not have gone through? When? And people say, oh, the infrastructure bill, they already had the votes. So if you know you already got the votes, yeah, it makes sense for you. Oh, let's show that we're the squad and let's use our leverage. They already knew they had the votes. So them voting against it, they knew it wouldn't matter. You see how it works? This is exactly how it works. It's a lot of performative. They put on this air like they're going to do something without actually doing anything. And now you hear from someone like Aaron Mate, like I told you, who was not one of those first people to call out after Force the Vote, Fraud Squad. He wasn't one of those people. He still wanted to give them a chance. Now even he tapped out. I'm out. If he was in the ring, he tapped out.
You would think. Aaron Mate, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Okay, now we're going to go do a deeper dive into this because we're going to see why is this happening though? And I told you about the career part, but I think it's really important that we look at, is this the one I wanted? That's not the right link. Balls. I'll come back to it. I'm saying that a lot tonight. I have an opinion piece that I want to show you. So we're going to look at this first. And then I'm going to show you what they signed on to when they became a part of Justice Democrats. And we're going to go through and we're going to see what they're doing and what they're not doing. Now, this is an opinion piece. And this was written by Leonard Goodman. This was written last year. And he said, what happened to the squad? Now, we're not going to read the entire article, but there is a piece here that I do want to highlight. And I think we need to pay attention to this. Now, he is talking about Medicare for all. Consequently, I lost my spot. I'm sorry. Where did I go? I shouldn't have increased the font. And now I'm like, oh, there it is. Okay. Consequently, Medicare for all is more popular than ever, favored by 85% of Democratic voters and about half of Republican voters. Yet, Democratic Party leadership still refuses to even hold hearings on the bill. So when people like Rokana tell you they don't have the votes, I just want you to know they're not even having the hearings either. Biden's plan to deal with the crisis, he's talking about the pandemic, is to give more taxpayer money to health insurance company giveaway programs like COBRA and ACA. By the way, COBRA is absolutely horrible. Horrible. Is expensive. Early in the pandemic, President Trump promised to have the government pay everyone's pandemic bills. This promise quickly vanished after health insurance companies saw it as a major threat to their industry. Now, this goes on, but this is the piece I want to address right here. What happened to the squad? Just a few years ago, Democratic voters elected a group of progressives who promised to go to Washington, D.C. and start a political revolution. Led by AOC of New York, the squad promised to take on corporate wing of the Democratic Party. Note that word, promised, to take on the corporate wing of the Democratic Party and fight for programs that benefit working people over the donor class. First on their list was Medicare for all. It is sad to report that in just a few short years, the squad has collapsed into a puddle of excuses and Twitter spats. Speaker Nancy Pelosi has demanded all hands on deck to protect the party's donors in this unique time of crisis. And the squad has fallen in line. As I wrote in a previous column, because of the Democrats' slim majority in the House, just a handful of progressives had the power to demand a vote on Medicare for all. If they chose to exercise that power on behalf of working people, AOC and her colleagues did not force a vote on Medicare for all. Instead, they stood with Pelosi and the donors in keeping the bill off the floor of the House. And I do have to add this here for people who are still against force the vote. This strategy is in the DSA handbook. It's online. You can look it up for yourself. I've read through it. That's where the strategy comes from. So when people were criticizing Jimmy Dore, which again, this was a personality conflict more so than anything. When people were criticizing Jimmy Dore was just following a strategy that is in the DSA handbook, which their DSA members, they should be following anyway. Let's go on. The squad did not coordinate their votes last month, but it was not to help, the squad did coordinate their votes last month, but it was not to help working people. You see this running theme here? This is something that I've been talking about recently with the squad. Their base has mainly become the academic elite. That's who their base is. Their base was supposed to be working class people, right? There were a lot of working class people that supported them in the beginning. Their base is now people who have money. So they may not be taking corporate money, but their base is still, it's that same class as the corporate Democrats. Rather, 3 out of 6 squad members, including AOC, agreed to vote present to assure passage of a bill to increase funding for the Capitol Police. All 6 members of the squad told activist groups that they opposed the bill. AOC and the other abstainers spent a year chanting and tweeting that the police should be defunded. Remember when they were all for defunding the police? But then behind closed doors, they coordinated their votes so the bill could pass by a 1-vote margin. And I'm glad that he pointed this out, that they coordinated their votes, because they did. Notice that every now and then one of them will swap out and they'll be the person that's kind of the rotating villain. They take turns. This is on purpose. Even worse, the squad have run interference for President Biden, discouraging their millions of followers on social media from demanding that he keep his campaign promise. Biden has already abandoned every promise he made to the working people, including a $15 minimum wage, a public option to compete with the for-profit insurance industry, forgiveness of student loan debt, which he did some of that. And even some of that was changed. Lowering of the Medicare eligibility age and the promise to negotiate drug prices. Yet AOC asserted that Biden has exceeded her expectations, while Representative Jayapal gave Biden an A grade for his performance thus far. What passes for the left in the Democratic Party has mastered the art of performative resistance. And this is the part I want everyone to pay close attention to. What passes for the left in the Democratic Party has mastered the art of performative resistance. They tweet out anti-establishment rhetoric. But behind closed doors, they play for Team Blue, which means they play for Team United Healthcare, Team Humana, and Team Raytheon. It's basically pretending that they pretend like they're fighting for you without actually fighting for you. They try to make it look like they're doing it, but they're not doing it. This piece right here is the most important passage of this article here, this opinion piece. Behind closed doors, they are still playing for Team Blue. They're not going up against the corporate Democrats. That's the problem. The collapse of the squad shows that change will not come from inside the Democratic Party. And again, honestly, reading this, you would think that I wrote this, maybe my comrades at RBN wrote this, maybe Nick wrote this, maybe JB, CJ, maybe Jimmy Dore wrote this. We didn't write this. And this shows you we're not the only people that see it. The collapse of the squad shows that change will not come from inside the Democratic Party. The two corporate parties that control Washington, D.C. are rotten to the core. It is a fool's errand to think that we can make the Democrats fight for working people while the party's major donors are telling them to keep the status quo. It's time for progressives to walk away from the Democratic Party and support a third party that is free of corporate influence. Again, this did not come from me, but I damn sure have said it. And for people, if you want to read the full article, it's longer than what I read. I'll give you the link here in the chat. And that way you can read the entire article. But this article was written last year. What happened to the squad? Now, we're going to dive a little bit deeper here because there's something I wanted to put in here. Let me remove myself here because I put up the wrong link. Thought I put up that link, but I didn't. Oh, I did put it up. Oh, I did. I just didn't open the window. Okay. We're going to look at what they were supposed to do. And I actually have a list. You guys know I come with the receipts. We're going to look at the ideology and political issues, what was supposed to happen. And let's make this bigger. Okay, let me go. Look, let's look at this. This is Justice Democrats. This is the piece that's important right here. To accompany its launch, Kulinski and Uygur published the following set of progressive founding principles for the coalition. These are the principles. These are the principles. So let's see what they're supposed to be doing. Creating a new infrastructure program called the Green New Deal. You know what's interesting? That it says a new because it wasn't new. The Green Party had the Green New Deal. You see how they take stuff from the third? Let's just go on. Ending arms sales to countries that it says violate human rights, such as Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. Say what now? Ending arms sales to countries that it says violate human rights, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. So even here, they were letting you know that Israel was violating human rights. But the squad members, with the exception of Rashida Tlaib, and that's because she is Palestinian, the squad members were back in Israel. Take notes. Take notes, guys. This is too crazy to believe. Enacting a federal job guarantee, which would promise all Americans a good paying job, $15 per hour plus benefits. Have they written any type of bills or legislation for the federal jobs guarantee. See, this is supposed to be some stuff that they're supposed to be doing. Ending the death penalty. Ending the practice of unilaterally waging war, except as a last resort to defend U.S. territory. Ending the practice of unilaterally waging war. So when we look at this conflict here with Russia and Ukraine, what was that? With them voting to fund them. Ending the war on drugs in favor of legalization, regulation, taxation of drugs, and pardoning all nonviolent drug offenders and treating all drug addicts. That's interesting. Treating all drug addicts, because even nothing. I ain't gonna get on my TYT spill tonight. Listen to this, guys. Ensuring free speech on college campuses and supporting net neutrality. Now, Ron Paclone was just on here last night talking about the net neutrality legislation that still hasn't even been, what's happening? Ensuring universal education as a right, including free for public college and university education. Again, where is the legislation? What are they doing? And I'm not saying everything is going to be brought to the floor for a vote, but these are the things they're supposed to be doing, you guys. Let's go on. Ensuring universal health care as a right, which is why they should have forced the vote. Establishing paid maternity leave, paid vacation leave, and free childcare. And here it says establishing. They are supposed to be leading this. Expanding anti-discrimination laws to apply to LGBT. We forgot the Q here. People. Expanding background checks on firearms and banning high-capacity magazines and assault weapons. Funding Planned Parenthood and other contraception and abortion services and recognizing reproductive rights. They're supposed to be funding it themselves. Okay. Implementing electoral reform and public financed elections nationwide to make irrelevant and obsolete fundraising from large corporations and the wealthy. And this is why I always come back to what happened to them talking about ending Citizens United. Let's go on. Let's go on. That's why I bring that back, because that's really important. Implementing instant runoff voting nationwide in an effort to make third-party and independent candidates more viable. Highlight the fuck out of that one. You see this? Implementing instant runoff voting nationwide in an effort to make third-party and independent candidates more viable. So when you hear people like Kyle and Jink and all these other people shit on third parties and say they're not viable, make sure you redirect them back to their own rhetoric, which is something that the Justice Democrats was supposed to do. But they point fingers at us. They call us names. All of a sudden they forgot what they fucking wrote. I don't. This was on their project. Ashura, so Kyle gave up. Basically, this is why we're in the position we're in now, because this piece was never implemented. So when people call us nihilists and say we just want to give up or we're being mean, no, you need to go back and look at the project and how it was defined. Mousted said Sabby holding their feet to the fire. Yeah, I'm sorry. Cryosynth said Kyle found his money, honey. They're both millionaires. Listen, Implementing the Buffett rule, ending offshore financial centers, the capital gains and income taxes, and increasing the estate tax. Making the minimum wage a living wage and tying it to inflation. Pardoning Edward Snowden. You guys see all this stuff? Passing the Paycheck Fairness Act. Abolishing U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. Abolish ICE. Reforming police by mandating body cameras, establishing community oversight boards, eliminating broken window policing, ending stop and frisk, and appointing special prosecutors to hold police accountable in courts. I'm not even going to touch the policing one because we all know that has not been improved. This is hilarious looking back at this. Renegotiating CAFTA, DR, and NAFTA, and opposing permanent normal trade relations with China and the World Trade Organization. Stopping any reductions to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and establishing single-payer universal health care. Here it is again. Stopping anthropogenic climate change through an ecological revolution and upholding the United States participation in the Paris Climate Agreement. Uncompromisingly rejecting President Trump's immigration proposals, policies, particularly executive order, and deportation of illegal immigrants. And you know what's interesting? It says reject Trump's immigration proposal policies, but Joe Biden kept some of those same policies. This is to remind you what they're actually supposed to be doing. And although they signed this pledge, there was no accountability if they didn't do it. And the same people who organized this organization or started this organization want to tell you to be nice to them. What have they done on that list? Interesting, huh? That's what's supposed to be happening, you guys, and it's not happening. They've been there a couple years now. It's not like they just started last year. EMK says Justice Dems are a lost cause. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this goes back to them not speaking out about the funding for Ukraine, which technically, if I'm looking at this list, they should be doing. Let me go to some of the comments here. Jay, Sabrina, you have been over there in Boston listening to Aerosmith. I was snorted. For people who don't know, Aerosmith actually formed here in Boston. So that's probably why Jay made that comment. Thank you for the super chat, super sticker, Giovanni. And thank you for the super sticker, JM. Thank you for the super chat, Justin B. Totally love Jose for calling out AOC. We need anti-war voices in Congress. Would Jose and other activists be willing to help us get anti-war candidate Matthew Ho elected to U.S. Senate in North Carolina? I can ask him. I think I can DM. Yeah, I can DM Jose and ask him. I can do that. I can do that. Did I get all of these? I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, I was making sure I didn't miss anybody. So, yeah. Carrie, I've seen Aerosmith 4 times in concert. Damn, Carrie. How was it, Carrie? How was it? I want to know. I've never seen them in concert. Let me go on over to Rockfin and make sure I grab these guys. Let's bring them up here. Man, it's rough without Eric. When Eric's not doing this. The background stuff. I don't know how he does this. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right. Let me shout out tips on Rockfin as well. I want to make sure I did this right. Live chat. I just want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Okay. So last time I ended here. Wait a minute. Nope. Yeah. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. More precise definition. Libs virtue signal their values, but when the rubber hits the road, they don't stand behind. Martha's Vineyard, plus you trying to get them to go to Roxbury to deliver coats. Progressives want reform to make it more equitable. Pro-unions, antitrust taxing, wealth regulate capitalism. Socialists want to transform the system, replace it with socialism, nationalization, co-ops, and public banks. Use Kaboob rule to play. Yeah, Professor Kaboob hits the nail on the head with that one. And thank you for this tip as well. Sab, we have got to coordinate attack and hit for-profit healthcare and housing simultaneously all over the U.S. to make the enemy divide their forces. With BI states leading the way, we will have them trying to put out fires all over the U.S., which is why January has to be all hands on deck, and we've got to start filing for these initiatives in all 23 BI states. We'll get it right here in states ground up strategy. And thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Ian. Ian said winter is coming. It's true. This is true, Ian. And I've never seen Game of Thrones, but I know that's where that's from. Balls. Let me click here. Okay, and then I do just want to show the democratic socialist problem. And there's just one piece here I want to show. Right here, this piece. So when we talk about them being socialists per se, what does that actually mean? Now, there's a piece here from the Harvard Political Review. I'm not going to read the entire article, but I do want to highlight this piece here because I do think that this is important. But while comparing Sanders' beliefs to those of the most extreme socialist dictatorships may not be good in faith, the senator to some degree invited these comparisons by adopting the moniker of a democratic socialist. Indeed, many Capitol Hill progressives have embraced the term. Core to the platform espoused by contemporary American democratic socialists are policies like Medicare for All and Green New Deal. Now, listen to this part. This is the part I think people need to pay attention to. Socialist, not quite. There's only one problem. The policies of contemporary American democratic socialists aren't really socialist at all. Given that the word is constantly being manipulated and reinterpreted, there is no one true definition of socialism. But one of the central tenets of a pure form of socialism revolves around workers seizing the means of production from corporations. In socialist states, this process often involves nationalizing and socializing industries. While many of the proposed democratic socialist policies in the U.S. would certainly lead to increased influence of the government in the economy and regulation and industry, few directly involve workers gaining control of the economy. Let's highlight this right here. And this is part of the problem. A lot of times I hear people refer to the Squad and Bernie Sanders as socialists. Technically, they're not socialist. What is missing there, and that's what they point out in this article, what is missing is few directly involved workers gaining control of the economy. So when you look at the policies that are present and the ones that I long ass list, I just went through for you of what the Justice Democrats are supposed to be doing. Where's the piece where the workers gain control of the economy? Where's the piece, and I'll highlight this as well. Here we go. Right there. Where's the piece where the workers are seizing the means of production? It's not there. So I think there's a bunch of different things that have gone on here. We got people going around calling themselves socialists that technically are not socialists. And this piece about seizing the means of production, the workers doing that, is very crucial. And that was not a part of the Justice Democrats platform. So what that means is that at the end of the day, they're just Democrats. Where Pilgrim says social-ish. Oh man, I can't do it. You guys are cracking me up tonight. Oh man, that's oh man, I got the nerdy laugh going on tonight. I don't know what's happening. People are saying shout out to engineers in the chat. What's happening? Did I miss something? I don't know, man. Maybe I missed something. Something happened with engineers? Is today National Engineer Day? I don't know. Just us Democrats. That's right, Jay. Bring it on home, Jay. Bring it on home. I'm such a nerd. Oh boy. Thank you so much for the super chat, Derek. Cornell West pointed out that Bernie wasn't a socialist years ago in this video. I can't click on the link. Oh. Well, I'm recording this, so I'm live. I'll just go back to this video and then look at the last part of the HTTP there. But thank you so much for that, Derek. Well. Ashira said social democrat equals just a regular Democrat. Jared said AOC is a social mediaist. You guys got jokes tonight. Oh man, it's after 10 o'clock. I kept you guys kind of late tonight. There's no call in tonight, you guys, because I'm going to Vermont tomorrow. And I'm gonna do a foliage drive in Vermont and bring my camera and take some pictures. Foliage is really pretty. It's pretty in Massachusetts, but up there, wow, it's really pretty. I'm gonna be like that scene from Family Guy. I don't know if you guys watch Family Guy, but there was an episode of Family Guy where like one leaf changed color and it fell down and they were like, oh no, the New Yorkers are coming. It's true, right? It really is true. Like fall's pretty popular here. Like one leaf and everybody's coming up. Yeah. I'm sorry. I will make sure I'm not missing anybody. Thanks for the super chat, Oz. You complimented your engineer, Eric. I wish all hosts would. Yeah, guys, compliment your producers, your engineers. Shout them out on the stream. It's not easy work. At least for me, it's not. Make sure you give cred where cred's due. Shout out to the people in the back. Just like when I was in high school, we were doing plays when I was in high school. They used to always make a habit of shouting out the stage crew, not just the actors, not just the people who were playing the roles, but also the production crew, because without them, it wouldn't happen, right? Even though you don't see them, still wouldn't happen. Ooh. Oz says 100% you and Convo do it on the regular. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I know, man. That's so cute. That's sweet. That's awesome. All right. And I'll just do one more check on Rockfin just to make sure I didn't miss anybody. And we'll do what we do. And then I'll head out, guys. I was live for a long time tonight. Fat bottom girls, you make the rockin' world go round. All right, let's see. Take you home tonight. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I got Roger and I got Ian. So I think Ian was the last one. Okay, cool. Fat bottom girls, you make the rockin' world go round. All right, guys, it's been fun. It's been real. I hope I did okay without Eric helping me in the background. I try. But have a good night, guys. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you again on Monday. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.